Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So I was reading an article coming out about how the estate of Sears is suing the head of Sears, that Lambert guy, for some wrongful doings during the whole Sears insolvency bankruptcy issue. And they named Stephen Mnuchin as one of the defendants inside of this case. So yeah, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin and this Lambert guy from Sears, they're going to be getting sued for who knows what. I think a lot of it had to do with some real estate deals that they had done where they sold property and then leased it back for some high rates. Anyway, once we get a little bit more information about the lawsuit, we'll break it down for you guys and do another video on it. But what I thought it would be an interesting thing to talk about is the credit default swaps. Now, if you're not familiar with credit default swaps, it's an insurance policy against another investment. So say, for example, an investor buys a mortgage-backed security, right? A mortgage-backed security is a bunch of mortgages that grouped up into a single security, right? And so he buys that security, but then also buys a credit default swap to go with it. So if the security, the investment that he bought goes bad, the credit default swap, the insurance policy, will kick in and make him whole again, right? So it's like buying car insurance, right? You wreck your car, you get made whole again, if your car gets damaged. So a credit default swap is just like an insurance policy. Well, this is an interesting story because what ended up happening when Sears ended up going bankrupt is they went to the bankruptcy judge and they said, hey, we have $900 million worth of these notes that are in-house. Now, I'm not exactly sure how these things work, but they have these notes, right? These $900 million worth. Now, of course, if they go to auction these things off, they're not going to get $900 million worth for their notes, but that's how much they have on their books right now, right? And the judge was like, yeah, cool, go ahead and auction them off, right? Well, that's when another company stepped up and says, hey, we'll give you $82.5 million worth. We'll buy $82.5 million worth of those notes, but you got to lock the rest up so you can't sell them to anybody, right? So they go to the judge, Sears goes to the judge, and they say, hey, we got a company here that's willing to give us $82.5 million for these notes, but they say that we have to lock the rest up and not sell any. And the judge was like, no way. Right? There's plenty of buyers out there that we can find that, well, not plenty, but there's buyers out there for these notes. And there's a group over there saying they're they're willing to buy $100 million worth. So no, we're not just going to lock up, all the rest of them so that this company can buy $82.5 million worth. Well, this was a big problem for that company. That Series, the name of that company is Cyrus, right? So Cyrus, who wanted to buy these $82.5 million worth of these notes, the reason why they wanted to buy them is because they didn't want those notes to go to auction. See, they sold credit default swaps to a bunch of hedge funds on those notes. And if those notes go to auction, most likely they're not going to sell for a very good, they're going to sell for a very low amount. And the lower that amount goes, the higher the insurance policy kicks in, right? So Sirius, doing their best to keep from having to pay out a huge insurance policy, was trying to keep those notes from going to auction, right? Well, here's the thing. The judge was like, no way, right? Auction comes around, and there's no buyers, right? The only people who were standing there at the table was Sirius with $82.5 million worth ready to make a purchase. So what I'm assuming happened, right, is that, and even the judge was like perplexed by this, right? The lawyers were like, hey, we're gonna do some research and investigations. We're gonna find out what happened here and see if there was some wrongdoings, right? Because this is what I suspect happened, right? You had buyers at the table who were ready to come in and buy up these notes, but Sirius was going to have to pay out a huge amount if that happened. So I'm assuming what Sirius did is they went to those buyers and they said, how much is it going to take to keep you from buying? Right? Because they didn't show up to the table. And now these hedge funds who are looking to stand to gain a bunch of money, they could have gone to the auction and they could have bought and dropped the price and then got paid for it, right? But they didn't show up either. So I'm only assuming that Sirius talked to them as well, saying, hey, what is it going to take to keep this auction from taking place, And then they probably just paid out, because that's obviously what happened. I mean, Sirius was the only, people who showed up to make the purchase of these notes that Sears was selling, right? And this is the type of games that credit default swaps are playing, right? So if you know anything about credit default swaps, you'll realize that it is huge. It's like the market is like $600-700 trillion, right? And it's mainly operated in the shadows of the banking system. So it's very unregulated. Like nobody knows exactly who has what, where, and what's insured and what's not. And there's talk about how these credit default swaps could seriously like jeopardize the entire system because they could start dominoing each other, right? Where one credit default swap starts kicking in others, and then pretty soon all of them start kicking in, as all these failures start taking place. So what I found interesting is that you have companies now who are playing the game with CDS buyers and sellers, right? So say you're a corporation, you're about ready to fail, right? And you go over to the guys who had just bought a bunch of credit default swaps against your debt. And you say, hey, we're not going to be able to make our payments, right? We're going to default on our debt. How would you like to expedite that situation? Give us some money and we'll just go ahead and default right now instead of waiting to see when it happens, right? Because if you give us some money, we'll default now. You guys just, you get paid on your insurance policy. The moment that they say, yeah, we'll do that, they go over to the buyers or to the sellers of the credit default swap, right? So the buyers say, yeah, we'll give you some money if you default now so we can get paid. And they go to the sellers and they say, hey, the buyers of those credit default swaps, they said that they're going to give us a bunch of money to default. How much are you going to give us to not default? You see how that works? Or yet, there's another way. Credit default swaps generally have a time limit to them. They have an expiration, right? So, hey, this credit default swap's going to kick in 2 months, right? Well, we're going to fail right now. Why don't you give us 3 months worth of money, carry us along for 3 months, and then after that, the credit default swap will have been expired and we can fail then. But at least you can carry along for another 3 months. Isn't that funny? And hope that the company may be able to find a way to pull themselves back out of it again. But this is what corporations are doing now. They're actually going to the people who have bought in the credit default swaps and the buyers and sellers, and they're playing them against each other, which I think is just awesome. Anyway, Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.